him. In studio, I have CEO ISPAC, Eddie Makori. With me also have George Mburu. He is CEO, Mizizi Homes Africa Limited. Join the conversation via video link. We have Eva Otieno Murigu. She is Principal Africa Strategy at Standard Chartered Bank. When you look at the breakdown in terms of expenditure, Mr. Makori, because some people are saying we have a 3.6 trillion shilling budget, but the executive taking almost a third of that. Accounting-wise, when you sit and look at it as a CPAK, CEO Makori, does it make sense? If we're looking for a place to trim the fat, wouldn't this be the easiest place to go and start? Or why is it so hard to deal with how we're appropriating these monies in the different sectors?
I think it's a balancing act that the government is just trying to put in place, because even as you look at the executive, you also have to remember there is the Big Four agenda. The Big Four agenda has both housing, universal health care, education being part of it. But as you look at that, then as you rightfully said, that is where we should be able to start and cut down the budget. Even as you look at the budget, and as one of the things that I said is that the wage bill is not one of those that is going to go away soon.
Right.
And if you look at what the analysis that has been for the last 2-3 weeks, there's also another problem that is coming up on pension. 60% of the workforce in public sector is between 50 years and 60, which is the retirement age. So we're saying that in the next maybe 5 to 10 years, we have a larger workforce leaving the public sector. And therefore there's a heavy push that we'll have to go in terms of the pension that is going to be paid to this particular public sector staff. And that will we have to foot that as Kenyans in terms of taxes. I know there's been a push to be able to drive the pension scheme into a defined benefit scheme, but that is just taken off this year. But what it means that prior to this year, you will have to meet that particular pension liability, which has to come in form of taxes. I think what you're seeing here is that there's a balancing act between being able to pay, and at 80% is the wage bill, 70% is going to be the recurrent expenditure.
Okay.
And having just been able to analyze that, the big expenditure items like transport, which has taken 236 billion, you can clearly tell where that is going to go.
Right.
Education, which is taking another 202 billion, there's a lot that needs to be able to be done. We have a new curricula, the CBC, and needs to be able to be implemented. Besides that, we are in a COVID situation, therefore there are certain measures that have to be put in by the Ministry of Education to be able to ensure that the kids are quite safe as they go to school. I think the one that comes closer to that, and why we need to be able to ask ourselves, maybe it's necessary now, is security, which is 171 billion. The just being able to cater for the normal operations of our defense forces, it's necessary, yes. But at such a time, we then ask ourselves, how do we rationalize that to be able to make sure that Wanjiku doesn't feel the effect? Because in overall, if you look at just from the ministries, part of it, 1 trillion of the budget is going to the various ministries.
Right.
The other trillion is what is going to be able to fund development projects and borrowing.
Okay.
So we just have to, I don't know, I don't have a straight answer to you, but I know it's quite a challenge.
It's quite a challenge.
Yeah, to be able to see how the executive are going to balance this.
Okay, I don't know if we have Eva Otieno back on video link. Do we have her on? Okay, we can have in Eva as well, because Eva, even before I like to call George the face of the Big Four, because he's working within one of those pillars, which is affordable housing. Eva, can you hear me? As you get Eva back on that, I want to bring it to George, because we're looking at this and we're seeing what they're calling the tax hit list on the front page of the Daily Nation. You can see where your pocket is going to feel the pinch a bit more if this is indeed approved by, by Parliament. From your sector, any incentives for you to build more? Are we seeing less in terms of the costing? Because affordable housing is within those pillars. Yeah. Are you seeing that incentive to do more, less tax from where you are?
Yeah, thank you very much. In the Jubilee government, there are the 4 agendas, which are, and housing is one of them, affordable housing. And we as Mizizi Africa Homes Limited, we are in the forefront in pushing this agenda of affordable housing. And we have seen it is a very good agenda. And the way to look at affordable housing is from a broader perspective. Like, for example, we have such a big, huge chunk of land that is sitting idle, and still at the same time, from the data that was collected, we have a very big deficit in affordable houses, like 2 million as it stood at that time, and every year 200,000 units are needed. And these houses, there are people who need those homes, and there are people who are going to retirement, and you can imagine somebody going to retire and you are still paying your rent. It can be very hectic. We have people who are in the diaspora. They would like to come back home and retire back at home. Okay. And those people do not have homes to retire to. We also have people who are working and they are still paying rent. So this is a place that surely there is that deficit, and these are monies that can go actually to the people that are on the ground, because most people who are in construction, they are the people who have no jobs, they are the people who have no employment. And so when you have people who are working tirelessly, they don't have that time to go and supervise their construction, okay, then there is that need for people to do affordable houses. And because we have the land, and that land is not utilized, that's another place that we need to utilize that land. Let's make those people who are retiring, give them homes. Those people who are in the diaspora, remit that money back at home, because they can't send for people to just consume. That money will come and it will go actually to the people that are on the ground. And also will also create employment, and thereby we are going to remove the problem of unemployment on the ground, and thereby also the security is going to improve, because people, we know insecurity comes mostly because of lack of job. People do not have money. So we are going to create, to remove so many other problems by concentrating on the affordable housing. Also food security, we are going to look at it, because people are going to be buying food, they have money, and more people are going to be encouraged actually to do the farming. Okay. As we also export the same. Okay.
I also want to bring in Eva Otieno on this particular discussion. Eva, if you can hear me now. Okay, let's go right ahead on that. Eva, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Because what we are trying to understand at this point is, because when you look at some of the items that will get higher tax, we're talking about consumables, some that are in the medical space as well. CEO speaking about even the syringes as well, that will get more tax as we move forward. Yet this is under the Big Four agenda that we're trying to get affordable healthcare to move and spread across the country. It almost feels like the budget is at cross purposes with the legacy that's being tried to be left 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. What's the implication for what was the Big Four? Do we still see that to the end with the current budget?
Yes, thank you very much for that. So you're right in terms of 3 steps forward, 4 steps back with regards to the budget and also allocation to the Big Four agenda. I mean, I must say that it's a very delicate balancing act, because on one end you have the pandemic and that's still continuing, and you also have got ballooning, expense. And unfortunately, many of the African countries, including Kenya, got into the pandemic with very little space to spend, what we call limited fiscal space. So very little space to spend. And that means that many of the African countries, not only Kenya, have had to rely on loans and grants so that they can be able to assist the people of, in this case, the people of Kenya. And that's why we would see an even wider budget deficit number this coming fiscal year. With regards to the allocation of the budget, I think they would still be keen on making sure they are allocating to the big four agenda, with the housing, with the healthcare, affordable healthcare, which has become even more critical at this point in time. We could see maybe more tax leniencies around medical equipment or importation of anything to do with healthcare, especially that's touching on the pandemic. So that's one of the things that would be on the lookout for. With regards to education, that would also be a key area that, you know, would warrant focusing on, but we also know that the payback benefits of education are usually long-term, because Kenya has, for the longest time, boasted of very deep human capital in the region, in Africa especially. So it would be in the government's best interest to continue to invest in education. But at this point in time, maybe the focus would be more on healthcare as opposed to education, just given the current state of the pandemic, and also helping to the economy to muddle its way through. Another focus would be, you know, taxes that may not drag on economic growth. So already we've seen the corporate income tax having been revised back to the previous levels, and the personal income tax. So possibly they would not touch those. We could see more focus on state-owned enterprises, and helping to maybe support towards the state-owned enterprises, but more responsible support, because we also know that the IMF is keen on making sure that these SOEs get back on their feet and not cause the central government to bleed, which is one of the areas in which expenditure might be, which would be one of the areas of expenditure.
Okay, when we look at this, of course, everyone is trying to see where the country and you know, the citizens are getting their biggest hits in terms of taxes. But if we look at the lowest hanging fruits in terms of the immediate gains we'll be seeing from this, where do you think the revenue drivers might be? Where do we see the immediate revenue jumping up after we read the budget? Do we have any light at the end of the tunnel, Eva?
Okay. So in terms of maybe the low-hanging fruits on the taxation, we know that there's been the turnover tax would say put to a halt. So could we see another workaround towards that? We know that the government has also been keen on bringing in the informal sector. So could there be a tax or a measure to see how they could bring the informal sector back in, maybe focusing on the fintech companies and looking at ways in which they could also bring them into the tax bracket, especially the businesses that are happening digitally. So that could also be another low-hanging fruit. Obviously, that has been an issue even in the developed markets. So it's not just a Kenya-specific issue, but may be one of the areas that the government may be keen on taxing, because with the pandemic, I mean, I'm here with you virtually. We've seen more and more businesses going virtual. So that could be another source of revenue that the government may be looking to tap into.
Let me bring it to studio, because and this is admission, CEO Makori, from our own president, that we are losing 2 billion shillings a day to corruption. So if it comes to matters expense in our budget, that clearly is quite a big chunk of our money is being lost. And Kenyans ask themselves, why is it so hard to follow these financial trails, find out where the money has gone? We've seen COVID-19 and the COVID millionaires, billionaires scandal happen in real time. We're not asking for the auditor who was there in 1990 to come and give us the books. It's happening now, yet we still find it hard to follow the money trail. From an accounting point of view, from where does it go wrong? Why can't we find where the money is going to and bring it back?
I think it's all about, it's not about accountability. We can actually be able to trace where the money went.
It's lack of political good, is it? Lack of political goodwill?
Lack of political goodwill to be able to do this. Because there's no record that goes on in such huge amounts that is never recorded anywhere, either in central bank or in a bank somewhere. besides that, even the documentation that must have passed that particular payment must be somewhere.
Right.
It's only that then we need to be able to have the goodwill to be able to follow up this. That's notwithstanding. I mean, sometimes you need to be able to establish what are the facts before we can actually condemn that the money is actually lost. On average, you're told that there is an estimate, 2 billion shillings that is lost. But you also have to reflect and say, what is the challenge? Why are we in the situation that we're in? Maybe you just need to be able to have gotten a proper system of accountability from both the executive and national and the county governments in the utilization of funds. Because the challenge is that we don't do as a country, and that's why the other developing countries are doing better than us. Once we get money, we don't follow it to be able to see we don't follow that shilling to where it was actually spent, and also ask ourselves, was there value for money? We have to be able to devise our system in such a way that we have to be able to tell whether there was value for money in being on the amounts that were allocated on any given project. And I'll give you an example. We have now counties coming up, and a road that is passing through a county will be accounted for by different. The CDF might have done the road. The county government will claim that they have also done the same road. And when you come to other entities like Kera and Kenha, they'll also have to account for the same road.
Right.
And these are three different entities looking at the same road, financed only by one person, but all of them will have shown in their books that that road is done. So that's where the wastage comes in. And we need to be able to have a proper control, being able to say, okay, fine. Is it a high time that we go the GPS way in terms of capital projects? And once you have a project complete, then that is logged in with a GPS location, so that anyone else who comes to be able to say that we also have this project in place with the same GPS location, it reads out and says, this project is already done, so where did the money go? And that's how we will help this particular country.
And even as we look at that, I want to come to you, George, because from last year coming into this year, there's been a sort of cash crunch. Trying to get that liquidity for your business, cash flow isn't working as it should. So it's been a key issue of concern. How are you dealing with that, and what are you expecting moving forward for the next year? Because whatever is spelled out now has a direct implication as to how cash will flow in the economy and in your business as well.
Thank you very much. With the pandemic, people have learned that now it is time we also start depending on ourselves, because previously people were so reliant on everything saying the government, and also relying so much on politicians and what have you. But now people have seen, if we do not stand, we as the people, to come and stand as the people and do the right thing, we are going to be, at the end of the day, to perish, all of us. So it is high time that now the citizens need to take charge and also have their voice heard, because we have seen like the big four agendas. If the people who came up with those agendas can come publicly and tell us, where did you get this agenda from? From my own analysis, I think they borrowed it from the Vision 2030. And Vision 2030, if you look at the people who are sitting at there, the chairman, they are mostly business people. And they came up with a very good blueprint for our economy, how we can grow our economy. And you find that sometimes the politicians take this document, then they come up with their way, which is also a good thing, because at the end of the day we are looking to make our country a middle income earner. So there need to be information. We are doing this because of this. We have borrowed from here, and this is where we are heading. We have seen some of such people who are sitting in the Vision 2030, and they are heading institutions that are making big profits. We have seen in our own country an institution, a company, maybe a bank, having a very solid asset base, and they are in this country, and still in this country we are saying we are going down, but we are having institutions which are well managed, and they are growing. So if we as the people and the business community can raise their voice more, let us get more accountabilities, let us talk more, why are we doing this? If it is like the roads that we normally hear, these are government road, these are county road, let us understand clearly, and also the government we put it to account to have a proper way of explaining why they are doing this. Is this the county? Is this the government? Who should be held accountable? Yeah, we hold our government because at the end of the day, the government is accountable to the people, and especially to the business people who are paying the taxes. And okay, when you do that, we are going to get our economy back on its foot. Okay,
we have 3 minutes to go before we wind up this particular discussion. I want parting shots around the table. I'll start with Eva on this one. Eva, what's your parting shot this morning? And it wouldn't hurt if there was some optimism, because right now, when you look at the front pages of the dailies, it just seems like it's gloom and doom. But go ahead, what's your parting shot this morning, Eva?
Okay, thank you. And a dose of optimism, yeah, at the start of the day. So in as much as we are going to see possibly a very wide budget deficit, and that means that there's going to be need for financing in the coming fiscal year, Kenya still stands favorably amongst the external financiers. So when you look at for example, in the Eurobond market, for example, for which we might also hear the Kenya government going into, Kenya still has is viewed as a strong credit. From that perspective, it's viewed as it has an ability to continue servicing its debt. Of course, that's at the expense of the other expenditure. But what we should also understand as the people of Kenya is that the borrowing is being done so that the Kenya government can be able to fund this budget that's going into different areas of the economy: agriculture, healthcare, manufacturing as well, and housing, which is the Big Four agenda. So in as much as we don't like the borrowing, this borrowing is to help the Kenya government meet its budget and also reduce possibly on the taxation measures that would be put out.
Thanks for that, Eva. CEO Makori, what's your parting shot today?
I think my parting shot, as Eva said, the country is resilient enough. What we need to also do is widen our tax base from the 1.8 trillion and we have the potential of being able to increase that from KRA's point of view, just being able to get where the tax points and how to be able to collect that money, and also being able to see loan on the leakages. Okay. The challenge that I have with loan is that it's not free. We'll have to pay it at some point. So whether we are saying it now or into the future, that loan has to be repaid. How do we repay it? It's from our own taxes that we're going to collect. What needs to happen now is just to be able to fit ourselves into the size of our court. The size of our court is 1.8 trillion. Therefore, we need to be able to have a budget that is more or less mirrors the 1.8 trillion shillings that we collect on a yearly basis. We are not saying that debt is bad. Let's utilize debt to be able to put up infrastructure that is going to help spur economic growth, but not having to borrow to spend on normal expenditure, salaries, teas, fueling guzzlers. That's not going to spur this particular economy. We need to borrow. When you're borrowing, targeted borrowing to be able to see value and economic growth in a few years from now. I mean, once the project is complete, then we need to be able to see in a year's time or 2 years' time that they're actually spurring economic growth.
Okay. George, Your parting shot this morning as we wait for Yatani and his briefcase, very quickly in a minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. What I would like to encourage we the Kenyans is that we have been a very resilient country, and that's why you find we attract a lot of people from the foreign countries they love our country, and also we are a very peaceable country, and we are a very hardworking population, and also the population of Kenya is very much educated. So these are some of the things that make we as the Kenyans to be a favorite. And we should not lose hope despite anything we have gone through, despite the corruption in our country, which is something that really hurts our country, despite the corona, which has hit globally. We now need to continue going together and take lessons from whatever we have learned, and also condemn things like corruption, things like failure to make accountability for the monies that we are paying, and also ensure that there is consistency in our country, like we are borrowing from the blueprint, Vision 2030.
Okay.
Even in the next government, let there be that consistency, and let it be very clear. It is not a favor, it is something that we need to know. We need to get this information, and we as a business community, we need to continue working together, continue talking, continue sharing ideas. Yeah, and when we do that, we are going to make our country to stand, and we are happy, we as Mizizi Africa Homes Limited, to be supporting one of the big 4 agendas, and it is very good. I want to commend those people who came up with it. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think that's how you'll wind it up as far as this is concerned. Many thanks for being on the show this morning. I'm quite the day ahead as far as budget day coverage is concerned. CEO ISPAC, Edi Makori, thank you so much for your time this morning. Asante sana. George Mburu, CEO of Mizizi Africa Homes Limited, many thanks for your time as well. Eva Otieno Murigu, Principal Africa Strategy, Standard Chartered Bank, many thanks for making time to be on the show via video link. Asanteni sana. I guess now it's all eyes on CS Yatani and what they're calling in this daily, I like that phrase, his magic briefcase. That's what it holds in there. Of course, special coverage throughout the day right here on K24 TV. However, we'll take a short break right now, come back on the other side. See what's been trending online, interactive in the next couple of minutes. Don't go too far.